Hi, what's up everybody? This is John from DM Shower Thoughts, where we find our best selves through gaming. And today, I'm going to be ranking the Barbarian subclasses in 5th edition, according to the same tier system that I used for the 13 official classes in the last video. As usual, to get this out of the way, this is purely my opinion, although this has been seeing most of these subclasses in action, and the ones I haven't are probably the ones that are going to be kind of like lower tier. Of course, this is before Tasha's Cauldron of Everything comes out, which is releasing the Path of the Beast and the Path of Wild Magic Barbarian. We'll see how those stack up to these current 6 official Barbarian subclasses. So I'm not going to be doing anything third party. Obviously, if you include homebrew, you can fix a lot of these subclasses to kind of fit their themes a little bit better. But what we're going to be looking at is what's officially printed and what's rules as written. Just to kind of reiterate what the tier system is, the lowest tier is going to be F. F is for failure. And then we've got D, C, B, A, and then at the absolute top we have our S tier stuff. And you may notice that when I ranked the 13 official classes, there was nothing below C tier. And that's because I believe in overall class design, even the classes that are a little less powerful, which ended up being Fighter, Ranger, and Warlock, really there wasn't anything that was so egregious that I would consider it like lower than kind of C, right? To kind of summarize each of the tiers, you know, F is like, I cannot see any reason why you would pick this subclass as opposed to another kind of build. D is like generally ineffective. Like, I really believe that you have another option available. C tier is, it's alright. I've seen people use it well. There have been some fun memories that have come out of it. B tier is pretty good. It's not the best option or the optimized option, but I can see somebody having a lot of fun with it, or I've heard stories about people really enjoying the subclass. A tier is obviously like excellent. Like I highly recommend it. The only things that get to S tier are the ones where it's like so far leagues above everything else that it is clearly the optimizer's choice. And again, this isn't any judgment on how anybody feels towards these subclasses or what your definition of fun is. So, to dive into it, our first official subclass for Barbarian is the Berserker. And the Berserker, I'm putting at a C tier ranking. Berserker's alright. It's one of those subclasses that a lot of people think are it's a little bit simpler, especially when we had only the player's handbook, right? You only had 2 options. You basically had a simple option and a more complex option. And complex doesn't always mean better or more optimized, but in this case it did. Berserker's like main feature is its frenzy, which when you go into a rage, you can choose to make it a frenzy, and when you do, you can use your bonus action to make an additional melee weapon attack on each of your turns. At the end of your rage, you do suffer a point of exhaustion, which is one of those conditions that really kind of freaks out players. Reason being is that if you get 6 points of exhaustion, your character just dies outright. And 1 point of exhaustion really isn't too bad mechanics-wise. You get disadvantage on all your ability checks, but it doesn't affect your saving throws or your attack rolls. And a lot of times, Barbarians their big thing is strength checks, which they get advantage on when they rage anyway. It also means you have to kind of save your frenzy. The cost of incurring a point of exhaustion. A bonus action extra attack isn't really worth it, you know? That doesn't say that Berserker is just a bad subclass, right? In particular, its 6th level ability, Mindless Rage, is pretty good. It gives you immunity to Charm and Frighten while you're raging. And if you happen to come under the effect of a Charm or Frighten, you can delay the condition by going into a rage. As long as you're raging, you can't be Charmed or Frightened. And if you were previously Charmed or Frightened, you get to ignore it for a little bit. So overall, Berserker gives you a little bit more bang for your buck. But a lot of times when players are asked for too heavy a cost to something, they are less likely to use it even when they need it. So this is one of those examples of the cost of going into a frenzy is too high based on what you get, And we can argue the math all day, but again, there's a certain mentality for how the game is designed versus how the game is actually played. The next one in the player's handbook is the path of the Totem Warrior, and this one is getting S-Class. Totem Warrior is really, really cool because not only does it include, in my opinion, the most powerful survivability feature in 5th edition, it also allows you to be customizable. For those of you that are like, oh, I don't want to do the optimized thing, none of the Totem Warrior options in the player's handbook are bad. Obviously, my favorite is the Bear Totem. That's the one that, while you're raging, you have resistance to all damage except psychic. And anytime you can have all damage, that starts to have really huge implications on your party's composition. I've seen Bear Totem Barbarian literally swim through lava, and using the rules as written from Tomb of Annihilation for lava, the 55 fire damage per turn was reduced by half, and because they had D12s, because they had a high constitution, because they're level 11, they literally just swam through it because that was going to be less damaging than being inside of the Lich's AoE. As you go up through the various levels of Totem Warrior, you get some cool role-playing stuff too, like the 6th level Bear Totem feature, being able to double your carrying capacity. It's so Dragon Ball Z how much weight your character can end up carrying, especially if you're going with a race like Goliath or Full Orc that already has a carrying capacity racial feature. And you get Commune with Nature at 10th level, so you get that role-playing kind of primal connection as well when it comes to being able to contribute to your team's exploration and social interaction as well. Moving on, the next subclass that came out was the Battle Rager in Sword Coast Adventures Guide. This is going to be F tier. Battle Rager is an alright concept. The idea is that you can wear spiked armor, which is a special kind of medium armor, and a lot of the subclass's features kind of revolve using your spiked armor. I have a few problems with that. A lot of the Sword Coast options were really weird. Sword Coast also gave you additional Totem Warrior features, and none of them were better than what we got in the player's hand. But in terms of the Battle Rager, already, because you have to wear armor, that can actually reduce your Barbarian's effectiveness overall. One of Barbarian's first level features is Unarmored Defense. And Unarmored Defense, if you guys have listened to me for any length of time, is one of the most powerful survivability features. Being able to tie your armor class to your ability scores, especially if your DM is having you roll stats and you can start with kind of higher stats than a standard array, you become somewhat unhittable at certain tiers of play. You're already kind of sacrificing that unarmored defense as soon as you put on medium armor. The features are like bad Berserker. Part of it is as a bonus action while you rage, you can use your medium armor to attack, or as you if you grapple a creature, you can deal it 3 piercing damage, which for a 3rd level character fighting 3rd level opponents, that's fine. But as soon as you get to about, 5th level, you're attacking twice with your thing. To get a bonus action 1d4 plus strength modifier spike damage on non-magical armor, as soon as enemies start showing up that have resistance to non-magical damage, that piercing damage becomes 1. So is that 1 damage worth a subclass feature? No, it's not. You're sacrificing your armor class for 1 point of non-magical piercing damage if the enemy is resistant to that damage type. It's so bad that I can't see myself as a DM justifying its recommendation to a player ever. Battle Rager does get this cool thing where it encourages you to use a Reckless Attack at 6th level by giving you temp HP. It also does a cool thing at 10th level where you can dash as a bonus action. Again, you shouldn't have to wait till 10th level to get a feature that would be worth taking the subclass. When it comes to Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which is where the rest of our subclasses come from, our next one is the Ancestral Guardian. And Ancestral Guardian, I'm giving B tier. Ancestral Guardian is pretty cool. It has a very distinct cinematic quality to it. Think like Lord of the Rings at the end of the last movie. Strider has like all the Ghost Kings or whatever attack. That's kind of what I imagine for Ancestral Guardian. It's definitely leaning into the whole tanking MMO mindset. Its feature makes it so that the DM's monsters are encouraged to attack the Barbarian, which, because Rage gives you resistance to physical damage, it allows you to influence the battlefield, and your character is already built to be survivable, so it does make sense the way all the abilities stack out. Its Spirit Shield ability, where it can kind of protect those around it. I do like Ancestral Guardian. I think it's a fine subclass. I just, again, don't think that the ghosts, the ancestral spirits, are worth more than resistance to all damage. And again, I'm one that doesn't necessarily always subscribe to whatever lore is in the book, as opposed to the narrative possibilities that certain mechanics allow. So what I mean by that is, like, a lot of people are like, oh, barbarians have to be idiots, they have to be angry because they rage as their thing. To me, rage is just a label for an ability set. Ancestral Guardians, like, kind of leans itself towards a barbarian that's just more communed with its culture and the land around it. Mechanics-wise, though, it's just not as powerful as Bear Totem. The next one is Path of the Storm Herald, and this one is going to be our first D tier. So this one, like, isn't as egregious as Battle Rager. It's still not very good, though. Storm Herald's, like, main thing is that it's kind of like a light paladin, in that it's got a lot of these cool aura effects. There are some conditions or damage it can do based on the storm type that you select. You get desert, tundra, and sea. Fire one is really bad. Like, it only deals 2 points of fire damage. And that's just, again, for a 3rd level character fighting 3rd level threats, that's even just okay. But as soon as you start climbing higher and higher in what you have to deal with, it just gets worse and worse and worse. There are some cool ones, like eventually you can do things like knock enemies prone or award temp HP to your allies in the aura. I also like how eventually, you do get additional resistances. The Desert Storm Herald, you can give all of your friends fire resistance. That's pretty nice. Like the Ancestral Guardians, to me, a superhero like Thor is a Storm Herald Barbarian. He's someone that, like, he loves to fight, he crashes down, he's got lightning magic, all that good stuff. I just think when you have that image in mind, the 1d6 lightning damage isn't gonna convey that same godly might and awe that a lot of players are going to think Storm Herald will give them going in. Which brings us to our last subclass, which is the Zealot Barbarian. And Zealot Barbarian is going to be a solid A-tier subclass. It allows you a little bit of a damage boost. The radiant or necrotic damage is both flavorful and functional, especially anytime you can add a little bit of magical damage. That's going to lend itself to being a little bit more effective and being a little less dependent on the DM to be effective. Its ability to rage beyond death and be able to get resurrected much easier than any other character. It's survivability in the different sense, in that if you don't survive, you don't get as much of a penalty. Still don't think it's quite as powerful as resistance to all damage except psychic. However, I do think that Zealot is certainly flavorful. There's some cool stories that you can tell with it, and a lot of times, just based on how the persistent rage stacks with the subclass features, basically, once you hit, like, 15th level, as long as you're raging, which doesn't end unless you end, it doesn't matter how much damage you take. You can actually go kind of, like, negative HP almost, which you can't do in 5th edition. There's very few things in 5th edition that can stop a high-level Zealot Barbarian. If we were to kind of reframe it, I guess Bear Totem Barbarian far outsurpasses it during the lower levels, whereas Zealot Barbarian is really cool 15th level and up. So now I want to know your thoughts. How do you feel about these Barbarian subclasses? Was there something that I missed? Do you have a cool story to share? Maybe about how I may have misjudged one of the subclasses? Or maybe, you know, you would rank them in a different order or something like that. Bear Totem is like the most powerful mechanically. That doesn't make it the most fun. However you want to have fun, you do you. And remember, game responsibly. Alright? Bye-bye now.